I've been smiling from ear to ear since I got the message from Mike. Probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and every one of you guys has been hearing about it. You're probably wanting to quiet me down, although you're going to want to hear every single thing that this man has to say. I reached out to him probably about a month ago, and I said, your music spoke to my soul. I grew up in Lompoc, California, and a very small town, and we didn't have the type of money to be able to get the normal stuff or the things that were cool. And when I heard this man's music, it spoke to my soul and told me that I was going to be okay, that it was okay to be a little different, that it was okay to step into that, and it was okay to speak about this one 3-letter word that most people would never talk about, which was God. And in a time of gangster rap, in a time of bravado, this man was bringing the soul back to hip hop. And if it wasn't for him, there wouldn't be groups like an Outkast, like all these different groups that have that he paved the way for. And it's my honor, my pleasure to bring on an absolute legend, 5-time Grammy nominated, 2-time Grammy winner, the first hip hop artist to ever win Best New Artist in the Grammy category, which I think in the hip hop era. So it's my honor, my pleasure to bring to you speech from Arrested Development. I don't want to say any more because I want you guys to hear from him. Let's get this party started.
Nothing more on my mind. I got 2 shines, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
The one, the only Speech. How you doing, my man?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. Yo, you got the raps going on like with the flow. Oh,
Man.
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing real
Hey,
good. How are you, bro?
well, I'm doing amazing. The one thing that I would have wanted to be able to do, but we can't do because of YouTube and because of licensing, I would like to be able to have your music as the intro on our show at some point,
So,
which I think would
so,
be amazing, man. It's such
so,
a pleasure to be able to connect with you. Take me to, we were just talking about the sampling part, right? So
yeah,
there was a famous sample, I believe it was Prince, Alphabet Street, with
yeah,
Tennessee, and he waited, but then he gave you a gift.
yeah, he did. So, when we dropped Tennessee, obviously, like the song, you know, not long after we dropped it, it really started to pick up steam. And started hitting the charts, and week after week we're starting to go up the charts. And by the time the song went to number one on the hip hop charts and on the R&B charts, it went to number 3 on the pop charts. I think it was 3 or 6, I forget. And literally the moment that it went down from, let's say it was 6, the moment it went down from 6 to 7, I got a call from Prince's office. And the reason is because I sampled the word Tennessee from Prince's song Alphabet Street, where it's like, I'm gonna put her on my backseat and drive her to Tennessee. And I use that Tennessee to Tennessee, Tennessee. And I just used that all throughout the track. And I got that call, and he was like, yo, gotta pay up, buddy. You know what I'm saying? And it was a funny story for me because, first of all, Prince is my number one artist. Like, I love Prince. He's
Yeah.
my favorite artist of all artists. And also, which is probably why I was influenced to use that song. And also the fact that he waited, till the song had done it best it was gonna do. And I think that sort of led him to choose what kind of price he wanted to charge for that sample. And he charged 100 grand. So it was 100 grand. At first, I thought, yo, this is crazy. This is exorbitant. Like, it's just a word. People have to understand, like, the music industry has evolved over time as far as sampling, because hip hop brought into this world sampling, which had never been done in previous generations. So at best, previous generations were doing interpolations, which is like where you re-sing somebody's song, or covers, and you could cover anybody's song. But sampling was a whole nother thing where you're sampling the actual master of somebody else's music. And so they were making up rules that, to be honest, as a producer and as an artist, I didn't know what all the rules were. It was such a new, genre of music. So yeah, he charged us 100,000, and at first I felt bad about it. But you're right, it was a gift because um, he could have. He had the rights to actually make us discontinue the song. He could have done that. He could have, like taken as much publishing or ownership of that song that he wanted. It would have been in his court, and he had the leverage. So he could have took 50, 70, 80% of the song if he wanted. He didn't do none of that. He just charged us 100 grand. And at that time, that wasn't a horrible thing to do, but I thought it was because I was still learning about the industry. But yeah, it was actually a nice thing to do because he didn't take ownership of the song.
So Arrested Development, 1988 is when you guys start. 3 years, 5 months, and 2 days. Famously,
Yeah.
what kept you going? And help me with you brought a whole different genre that you couldn't there was no benchmark for it. There wasn't a benchmark for the type of hip hop that you were going to bring, and you were stepping in. What gave you the courage to be able to step into that when, in 1988, we were talking NWA, we were talking a whole different type of hip hop.
Yeah. Well, there was a few groups that inspired me to be able to take it further, to widen what hip hop was known for. And so I'll go over a few. One was Run DMC. Run DMC, when they did Walk This Way, it changed the parameters of what hip hop could be, right? So they're doing it with the rock group Aerosmith, and it's like, okay, they're sort of doing a cover, but they're turning it into hip hop. And then LL Cool J with songs like I Need Love, right? Like he was being more emotionally vulnerable, and a love song in hip hop, which prior to him wasn't happening. But then more than both of those, groups like Public Enemy, who when they dropped the Yo Bum Rush the Show album, right? And this is probably 87, something like somewhere in there. It gave me permission, in a sense, as an artist, to speak about social issues and go in depth about it, and also be more musically daring than what hip hop had possibly ever done previously. And then lastly, I'd say De La Soul. When 3 Feet High and Rising came out, I literally lost my mind. Like, there was 2 records that in my career made me want to quit music. That's how much I love these records, especially hip hop records. One was De La Soul's 3 Feet High and Rising. It was so, if Public Enemy widened hip hop as far as the width of what it could be, De La just cracked the whole code. Like, their singles from Plug Tuning to the album, 3 Feet High, like every song was so experimental and every song was so explorative creatively, and the rhyme styles that they would use, the patterns, the way that they approach songs. So like all of that gave Arrested Development permission. And I say that I actually did reach out to Pasta News before we ever got a record deal, and I asked him if he could help us get on Tommy Boy, not knowing Tommy Boy was not a great situation for De La. But he wrote back, which I'm a nobody at this point. So like that's the coolest thing, and we're friends to this day. Pasta wrote back, and he was like, "Yo, I really like this song Rainy Revolution you guys are doing," and he gave me some connections that did help us to continue to move forward and ultimately get a deal. But yeah, De La was probably the last album before we dropped that really gave us a lot of permission, so it's just a lot of inspiration out there that told us we could do this.
What about your process? Like I was with Switchfoot. I don't know if you're familiar with that band.
Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely. Yeah.
I actually, Tim Foreman is one of my neighbors. And I
Okay.
reached out to him, told him that you were going to be on the show, and he was very excited about that. And I got a
So
chance to
thank you.
interview him right before they went into the studio, their process, they take with Switchfoot, every time they do an album, they go up to LA, they rent a house, and they live together. The band lives together for about 2.5 weeks. And in 2.5 weeks, they actually put together, they obviously have some things that they've been working on, but that's really where they solidify, find the name, everything like that. What was your process with 3 feet, or with 3 years,
3 years,
5 years,
five
and two
months.
months?
Yeah,
So, what was your process with that? And was it the same each album that you brought out?
that's a great question. So first of all, I I have done projects where we're all living together. Um, and to some extent, 3 years was that. So let me explain. So this is before we had the money to keep going in the studios. Cause back in these days, the late 80s and early 90s, you pay money per hour to go into the studio. So we didn't have a lot of money. We weren't signed yet. So I bought a Tascam 4 track, and it was a cassette player 4 track recorder, and it literally could record 4 tracks. Then I moved up to an 8 track. So I had 8 tracks, and me, headliner, which is our DJ, and some other members that weren't members of AD, but they were friends of ours. We all lived together. So it was a similar story as Switchfoot, where we're in the same house. We're constantly around each other. I'm sort of like a mad scientist kind of guy that likes to sit behind, which I have right here in my studio. It's actually right here. Actually, this direction. I have I used to use and I still use an ASR 10, which is a keyboard from Ensoniq. It's an old keyboard. They don't make them anymore. ASR 10 from Ensoniq and a HR 16 from a company called Alesis, and they don't make those anymore either. But I used to just sit behind, in my bedroom behind those particular 2 pieces of music equipment and start the ideas and create songs like, Tennessee or Mr. Wendell or People Every Day or Revolution or whatever. So it's like, you know, that was the initial recording style. And what I would do is record as much as possible on that Tascam 8 track, and just to sort of get the ideas fleshed out and make different versions, see what I like best. And then once we got a record deal, we got a budget. Wasn't a big budget, but we got a budget to be able to go in the actual studio. I rented out a studio called Tracks 32 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and recorded the first album. But we had already had those demos, so we knew what the song was going to sound like, and we just knew we could perfect it even better. So then we had our choice of microphones. We had numerous musicians that could come in and play certain parts with us, and just took it up a notch.
What was the scary part of the record industry at that time? Because in our heads in 88, 87, when we're listening to music, we're thinking, in the event that you do music and you get signed, it's straight easy street and there's gold on the road for the rest of your life and everything works out. Can you take us through the inner workings of that? Because I don't think a lot of people understand even how the record industry worked, not only today, but at that time.
Yeah, well, at that time, it was very much the best of the best, generally speaking, got signed to labels, because not everyone could do a song in your bedroom and put it out on the internet on a streaming service the next morning or the same moment. You could put it out on a social media platform at the moment you finish it nowadays. Back then you couldn't. So you had to have somebody, either an indie label or a major label, to help you put out records. I mean, sure, you could put out an independent record on your own, and even that might take months before you would ever get anything out after you finish the project. So, you know, it was very much a highly competitive and almost like rocket science to try to figure out what are the labels interested in, what odds can you get an actual deal, and where do you get this deal? Who's the brokers that can help you get closer to the labels? Who are the labels? These are the types of things. And especially coming from Atlanta, which is Arrested Development comes out of Atlanta, unlike New York, where hip hop started in New York. And so it had the LLs, the Run DMCs, the Cold Crush Crew, the Treacherous Three, Grandmaster Flash, the Fierce Five. It had a whole history of artists from that same city that had already made it and already released records. Atlanta did not have that. So you have this additional challenge of trying to figure out how to even get the attention of a record label. You get what I'm saying? So then once you get that record label deal, now it's a matter of picking the right songs that can make that album, hopefully as successful as possible. I remember for our album, we ended up using about 15 songs for our debut album, 3 years, 5 months, 2 days. But we recorded probably 25, right? So 10 songs had to get shaved off just because we felt like these other songs were probably more viable for where the market was at the time and stuff like that. So, there's a lot that goes into it that people wouldn't know. And then not to mention it was much more of a team sport back then than it is now. So now I could make a whole song and a whole beat in my home studio, put it out today and everyone could hear it. Back then, generally speaking, you're going to make a song maybe in your mind on a guitar, but then you're going to get in the studio and you got a mix engineer, you got an assistant engineer, you got the studio itself that you have to deal with, you got producers, a producer desk that is sort of giving you ideas. I was the self-producer on our stuff, but there was so much more of a team effort and things were a lot slower as well. So, the process was slower. You really had people deciding which mic, like, okay, rap to me the lyrics you're about to do and let me decide for you which mic, an engineer would do this, which mic is going to be the best mic for that delivery. Like, and I love that. So like, there was a lot more decisions being made by groups of people, and the whole process, therefore, in my opinion, was more interesting and more exciting,
When you talked about De La earlier, De La was famous for, well, I think one of the greatest of all time, if not the, but they introduced Tribe, right? And when you saw
Yeah.
those things kind of come into play, who was the first person that you connected with, maybe you opened for or whatever it was, that almost kind of put you on, or that you kind of started to break through because of a relationship through that?
Well, I want to say, I think I got to give props to the Jungle Brothers because I
Mm,
believe Jungle Brothers even introduced Tribe first. I want to say that
yes,
just on the
yes.
song Black is Black. Um, but ironically, mentioning Tribe, we opened up for Tribe. And here in Atlanta, way before AD was ever famous, and that was like one of the most exciting opportunities that we ever had because we love Tribe Called Quest. And so yeah, so I mean, I think that was one group that we were deeply impacted by, and we had a chance to open up for. Unfortunately, that particular show didn't crack open the code in a sense for us to be able to get signed, but it was a great moment for us nonetheless. So I hope that answered your question. But yeah,
Yeah. So speech, there's so many people that we get to watch in front of our eyes almost find their sound, right? So you see an artist
yeah,
and they've got kind of sea legs a little bit, and then they start to go. Like, you came out the box with your own
yeah.
sound. How did you find that sound, and what was what were um the largest inspirations for you growing up, and how could you get that confident, like on the first album when you came out, and stick to that?
That's a great question, bro. You know, first of all, I was inspired by Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 when I was 5 years old, maybe 6, 7. I'm not sure exactly what age I was, but back then they had a TV show on. They had a variety show and they had a cartoon show. Both of them I was so deeply inspired by that they were the start of the flame that, the spark that would end up being a flame for me. Then after that, I would say Rapper's Delight, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, all of that was like huge inspirations for me personally to get into hip hop and to dive deep, especially Grandmaster Flash's record that he released called Grandmaster Flash Adventures on the Wheels of Steel, right? So this record was the first album ever to use scratching on the record. So you're listening to an album that's using an album in order to make the album that you're listening to. And that was just an unheard of concept. I was blown away by it. I was forever changed from that day. In fact, I became a DJ before I became an MC and just started DJing parties because of Grandmaster Flash, who I've met numerous times and we've toured with. You know, those types of moments were just pivotal for me. And yeah, so all of those things sort of led to Arrested Development being able to come out later. I would say Public Enemy's album gave me the permission, in a sense, to be social and to be political and to talk about messaging. Um, as I already mentioned, De La, Jungle Brothers, I'll include them as well. Were KRS One gave me permission, and I will also say, being in Milwaukee, which is where I was born and raised, I spent my summers in Tennessee with my grandmother, but I was raised the rest of the year in Milwaukee. Being in the Midwest, we were influenced by all types of music from all the coasts. So we were influenced by the Miami bass style in Miami. We were influenced by house music in Chicago, which was about an hour and a half away from Milwaukee. We were influenced by New York, which was like Rakim and LL and all of these incredible artists, Houdini. But we were also influenced by the West Coast, who had Dr. Dre, and this is even before NWA, and when it was the Wrecking Crew and Egyptian Lover and like stuff like that. We were influenced by go-go music in DC. So we had all of these influences that we accepted as gold, whereas New York was hard pressed to like anything from LA, and so we were different. We were like, no, all of this is gold. All of this is incredible. We even liked Canadian rappers and UK rappers like Derek B and Canadian rappers like Cardinal. And, there's a lot of people that we were into. So that, I think that opened my mind up too. Like, oh, we could be different. There's a lot to pull from here.
When you moved to the South, so this is 33 years ago, you said you're in Atlanta. Atlanta at that time, when you guys dropped, it didn't really have its sound, right? I mean, it was coming. Obviously, if you lived in the area, you heard things. And living in the South, we actually came into Memphis in '94.
Oh, dope.
And so knowing it, like being there, you would hear stuff, but it wasn't like a widespread Southern, anything like that. Take me to this Tennessee part, because when I heard Tennessee, I told you it spoke to my soul. That's what I wrote to you when we first connected.
Right.
And people have always said that truth will resonate much more than any type of story that you can tell. And I didn't realize that this Tennessee song is actually true. Like it's a depiction. It's a documentary.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. So, you're right. So, the South early on in hip hop was trying to find its legs, right? Because the closest thing to Atlanta, for instance, musically was Miami. And so a lot of the early Atlanta sound was, 120 and up beats per minute, very fast, very much sort of capitalizing off of the Two Live Crew, Uncle Luke Skywalker type of sound, that they were really the heavy 808 bass that was happening in Miami, right? So they were really capitalizing on that, and they were sort of in that groove. And because of that, they didn't have a sound of their own per se. Like it was very much the Miami bass sound, and that's who most people were imitating and trying to sort of ride that particular wave. For me, coming from Milwaukee, but living in Atlanta now. So I moved to Atlanta in 1987. Well, I had just got out of high school. I'm a young dude, 18 years old. And I see this incredible diverse city with African culture, with African-American culture, with, of course, just generally American culture and everything in between. There's a lot of rock groups happening at that time early on. A lot of black rock groups too, like groups like Follow for Now, who was prolific in Atlanta, really booming. Other groups as well. So like the cool thing about that was that I felt like, oh no, Atlanta's sound can still be developed. And there's so much more that can be done here instead of just sort of going on that wave of the Miami bass stuff. So we took it there. Like just really the whole Tennessee song, for instance, like audio wise or musically, was a mixture of what we all love about hip hop in New York, which they were very much on some James Brown type samples and funk samples from James Brown era, but mixing this melodic energy that had not been done in hip hop yet. In fact, in New York, they were sort of Run DMC used to have a song where I rap, I do not sing. It was sort of against the law in a sense to be melodic in hip hop at that time. But we were embracing it because in the South, you have the church influence on every block basically. And there's this gospel, a lot of musicians, whether they were religious or not, got their legs in the church atmosphere. A lot of Black musicians in particular, that was the place that was like a safe haven for creativity. And a often sort of violent or not so friendly environment for Black people in the South. But the church was friendly, and it was a place where you could develop your skill set. So that melody, that sort of soulful feeling that Arrested Development was able to put in came from being surrounded by that energy. And same difference with even Goody Mob, who would later come after us, and Outkast, and Killer Mike, and so many others that would come after us. It's like that was allowed in the South, that whole energy. The song Tennessee lyrically was one of the most sad songs that ended up being it's a triumphant song in my opinion, like at the end of the day. So the song is about my grandmother, who I spent all my summers with in Tennessee, a small town called Glimp, Tennessee. It probably has about max 1,000 residents in this town. Very rural town. Spent all my summers there, and she passed away of a heart attack, my grandmother. And that same week, literally, we were at her funeral. The same week she passed, my brother Terry, who was my older brother, my only brother, passed away as well from an asthma attack. Totally unexpected. Both of those deaths were unexpected, and I felt like my world had just collapsed. And so the song Tennessee was inspired by the last place I saw both of them. My grandmother's funeral in Tennessee, and my brother was there to celebrate her life. And then that next week he died. And so the last place I saw both of them was in Tennessee. And so yeah, lyrics like, Lord, I've really been real stressed, down and out, losing ground, although I'm Black and proud. Problems got me pessimistic. Brothers and sisters keep messing up. Why does it have to be so damn tough? I don't know where I can go to let these ghosts out of my skull. My grandma passed, my brother's gone. I never at once felt so alone. So I just go into this whole, it's really a prayer because I'm talking to God the whole time. And I'm going into this whole like story of my life and the loss, but also trying to lean on God, who's obviously greater, to get me through it. So take me to another place, take me to another land, make me forget all that hurts me, and help me understand your plan. So yeah. So it's ironic that would end up being our first single, because that was the last song that we
Really?
ever recorded for the album. That was the last song we recorded for the album.
Did you know it was going to hit? Like, and when you're in the studio, there's obviously the whole song, but there's a iconic verse sung, and it's just one word: horseshoes. And I mean, I'm telling you, you would be dancing, and everybody would turn and say to each other, "Did you guys know what you were
Horseshoes.
doing?" Like, or was that just was it a test? Were you trying things out, or was it? I mean, where did that come from?
That's a great point, man. That is the brilliance of Airly Tari, one of the members of the group, who I gave her one charge, because to me the song was a little heavy, and it felt like it needed some levity. It needed a break, and so to be unique and to bring something new to the table, the break, usually songs have a bridge, right? And the bridge usually is going to go up like a chord up, and it's going to sort of take you to this crescendo and then bring you back into the chorus and then take you out. We wanted, instead of a bridge, we wanted to strip it down, and it just was the Shakers and her talking. And I said, look, just speak about anything other than what we're talking about on this song. Like, just speak about other things. And that's what I loved about what she did. Like, headliner, we're going down to Holly Springs, and she's like, I challenge you to a game of horseshoes. And to me, it's just a matter of like, I thought it was brilliant when she was done with it, because I didn't write that section for her. She wrote that on her own. And it was just her way of, I won't say comic relief, but I'll say like, okay, a commercial break in a sense. Like, this is just a commercial break. We're having fun with this. And then back into, what I would consider a more heavy subject matter. But the song musically, like I produced a beat, and the song musically is meant to be lighter though. So like even though the lyrics have a heaviness, if you really, read them and listen to what exactly I'm saying, the beat on the other hand has a certain jovial energy to it to me. So yeah, it was definitely a lot of juxtapositions in the studio when we was writing doing that song.
Well, it's incredible that you say it because until I researched the actual, like the meaning of the lyrics, it was always a uplifting. So it was always a, and you did that masterfully. Let's go to people every
Thank you.
day. Because there's a song on the internet right now. It's like a little meme and it's, try Jesus, don't try me, because I'll throw
Yeah.
these hands or something like that.
Right, right.
And
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know that joint.
it took me to people every day because here's this
Yeah.
people every day, Sly and the Family Stone, and then you dropped bars on that one that made I just got chicken skin right now. I just got goosebumps while I'm saying it because you were like, "Hey, I'm cool. You can see all I'm different, everything like that. We're all
Yeah.
loving, but test
Yeah.
these hands and you ain't gonna
Right,
like it that
exactly.
much, right? Help me with
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
song."
Yeah, I mean, that song was number one, a true story. So being raised in Milwaukee,
Mm,
Milwaukee is statistically known as one of the hardest places in the entire United States for Black people to be raised in. So that's where I was raised. So having said that, it was challenging on numerous levels, not just racism from outside my race, which definitely happened a lot. And I can go on for a minute about the many, many stories that have happened to me in that regard. But even inside of the race, there was this self-hatred going on where I would wear these, as I was starting to get more and more mature in myself and learning about my history and myself, I was starting to wear these dashikis, which was like a nod to being from Africa, right? And accepting the culture that my people come from. And then people outside, I'm just hanging out with my girl in real life at a park, and other brothers from the same community but didn't have the same mindset would start to pick on me, right? So like they're challenging me and messing with me and the peace of me and my girl being together, and it's like that story needed to be told, like in my opinion. And also there was also this sort of narrative that was being spoken about a lot in hip hop, that if you are a conscious artist or like an artist that's speaking about certain types of issues, then that also meant that you're soft, that you can't throw hands, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I think that it was my attempt to sort of show like, no, I'm everyday people. Like at the end of the day, I'm still everyday people. But I love the way we wrap that song up because it's about a fight, right? So that song at the end of the day is about a fight. But Ishi comes in with another like commercial break in a sense, and she's like, "Hey, you never know who you're stepping to. You could get stabbed, shot, killed, or hurt, and it's not worth it. Hit it." She just does this piece, and it's like, it's cool because I wrote that part, but she spoke it, and she added the hit it. And it just became a part that to me sums up the whole point of the song, which is we rather have peace. Like that's the real goal here. But don't step to us the wrong way. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just show respect. You know what I'm saying? So it's cool.
I always loved it. I mean, I always loved it for that. Was Sly and the Family Stone, was it something that, here's my Sly and the Family Stone story. One of my clients early on, and by the way, Headliner got his name because he was a barber. He was the premier barber in
That's right.
Atlanta, right?
You would
You,
line heads,
you,
headliner.
you know
Yeah.
how I started, Speech? I started as a barber. Well, in the double wide mobile home, we had dog clippers, and that's how I got into doing what I was doing. I had a 30-year career in the professional beauty industry, and it was all
That's
from
dope,
cutting
man.
hair, right? So
That's dope.
so it helped me with this because when we're I just lost the thought there for a second because I was talking about Headliner. Where was I at before? I got good ADD.
Me too, by the way. Yeah, no, what headliner was he was a premier barber, dude. Like
Yes.
in Atlanta. This is before AD ever blew up and got our start in the record label world. He was cutting hair right near some of the historically black colleges here in Atlanta, which is Spelman, Morehouse, Morris Brown, Clark Atlanta University. And he was cutting hair, and he was renowned for being one of the best barbers. Because back then we used to put like fades on your hair, high top fades, sort of like Kid and Play, but then really like Aztec and Egyptian type designs inside of the hair, which took your whole hairstyle like to the next level. And he was great at that. And so, yeah, his name was Headliner. A lot of dudes to this day say, yo, I used to get cut by Headliner. Like, he was the man. So I named him Headliner as like my nickname for him. Yo, you're the
Did you?
headliner. And it made sense, like he's the DJ for us, and he's like the headliner on the
Yeah.
DJ, but he's the headliner with the heads for real.
I captured it with my ADD. It was my Sly and the Family Stone. I had a client early on that told me that she had a bass guitar that she and I said I wanted to learn how to play one. I didn't know how to play, but she said, "Well, I'll let you have it for as long till you can learn." So she gave me an amp. She gave me a
Wow.
bass. Right. I go home,
That's so
speech all my life. I turn on Sly and the Family Stone, and I grew up Al Green, Marvin Gaye,
right.
Sly and the Family Stone. My dad had the soul side to him. He also had the Led Zeppelin. My brother went more rock, whatever it was. But I was feeling
Yeah.
more on the soul side. And I turn on Sly, and I'm like, man, I'm feeling it, right? I'm feeling.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
So I'd never played a bass before, and I turn the amp all the way up. I'm in an apartment. I turn it all the way up, and I start hearing it, and I'm like, man, I think I'm a natural. So I start
Wow.
pow, 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 and I'm just nailing this thing. Like I'm feeling it all the way through until the record ended, speech. And I kept going, but I was hearing him thinking I was doing it. And when it got done,
That's hilarious,
it was
dude.
it was the most awful sound that I've ever
That's
experienced.
hilarious.
It was awful. So with you, that Sly and the Family Stone, was that an inspiration growing up and such an honor for you to, I mean, because it was a play off of his music too, right? I mean,
Totally.
people
Yeah.
every day. Did you intentionally do that growing up? Did you say like I want to be able to do something as a homage to somebody to Sly?
Not at all. Not at all. So it's funny because I didn't know about Sly growing up for whatever reason. It just never was brought to my attention. So the first time I got introduced to Sly, there was two hip hop records that I loved the drums on, and it was 187 on the undercover car, and you don't stop. Snoop and Dre had that track, and then Jungle Brothers had a track. I forget exactly what it was called now, and both of those songs, I was like, "Who did the drums?" And I found out somebody told me, "Yo, that's from a group called Sly and the Family Stone." And I was like, okay, I'm going to the record shop, bought some Sly and the Family Stone, found that loop, definitely wanted to use the loop. And because I'm a producer, so I'm like, okay, I'm sampling that loop. And while doing that, started digging into the catalog and happened to just interpolate, because we didn't sample Sly on the song People Every Day,
Yeah.
but we interpolated it, which basically means we resung the chorus, right? And it just made sense. But I will say, once I started learning about Sly, I dug so deep. Like, he and their group was unknowing. Like, I was mirroring so much of what they were doing, but not knowing it, because I guess our energies and what we consider to be dope happen to be the same. Like, he came way before us, but I'm saying, like, us having girls and guys in the same group, it had not been done in hip hop except for Funky 4+1 until we did it. So, like, I didn't get that from Sly, but it happened to be the same energy. The women really playing a real role in the group. Sly did that already. Same difference. Later, we would even have people of different nationalities in the group. Sly did that, decades ago. My point is that this energy that Arrested Development would have, already Sly had done it, but I didn't realize that until I started digging deep, and I'm like, wow. It was an affirmation for me that, okay, we're definitely on some great pathways here with this group.
So, Speech, as a producer, take me through how I just went to a concert the other night, right? And my son is a big Forrest Frank fan. And
Okay.
so we went, and I thought it was interesting because he stopped the concert and he said, he pulled out his computer and he said, I'm going to show you how I make the music. And
Wow.
he took a clap. He was like, he clapped and he recorded it. And then he took it and he went through and he said, now it needs to have a little bit more, hi-hat. So he added that. And he's like, now it needs a little bit more, texture. And he added something.
Right.
Can you explain this part? Because this is so fascinating. I didn't realize that there's building blocks. As a producer, you're digging through
Definitely.
do you dig through the crates first, find the sample, and then add on? Or do you already have something that going and you add the sample?
That's great. Great question, bro. Now, I've been doing this for 33 years. So I've done all the above as far as how to start the song, but generally speaking, it is a sample because to me, I believe that samples are almost like a photograph of the spirit, the energy, the soul, and the thoughts of that time period. It's captured. And so to me, when you listen to a song, you're getting a lot from it more than just a cool melody and a nice beat or, a cool lyric. You're getting spirit, soul, all of this spiritual things that you don't even pick up on unless you're cognizant of it. So like I would hear songs, that loop right there. That right there could be it could go off on a different galaxy in and of itself. So that song obviously has its own, solar system. But I was like, okay, this little section of that song though could be its own solar system from that solar system. So it's like just adding galaxies to galaxies, universe expanding type of stuff. And so I would usually use a sample. I would like I like manipulating samples. So I use this ASR 10, keyboard that I was speaking of, to sample, and I would manipulate it. So sometimes, maybe even People Every Day, for instance, or um, Tennessee, there's a sample I would use. Boom and chip, boom, chip, boom and chip, boom. So like that to me brings this soulful energy that I really love, but I manipulated it. So I'm not just biting off of somebody. I'm inspired by that somebody, but I'm making something of my own at the same time. Then adding textures, drums, and then I listen to it. I listen to the creation. And a lot of times in my experience, the creation itself will tell you what the subject matter needs to be.
Mhm.
The music is speaking to you. So if you have an instrumental and it's either melancholy or it's happy or whatever it's doing, if it's soulful, if it's more rocky, like rock oriented or reggae oriented, blues oriented, it's telling you something. It's telling you sort of which direction you need to go in lyrically. And that's what I do. I just listen to it. Like a lot of creativity for me is really listening more than like proactively doing anything. It's just listening to what you got there. So like People Every Day, that sample is from Bob James. It's a 1 bar sample in his song. His song is probably 5 minutes and 49 seconds. And I used probably 2 seconds of it. But it created People Every Day because that little section to me it literally sounded like what summer feels like to me. And that's what that song sort of came from, just starting with that one little bar loop, you know. Dun, 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 dun. That's it. And there's a whole song that goes on in different chord arrangements and everything, but that was the one part to me that felt like the most fun or beautiful summer you could ever imagine. And I love when I hear that song, People Every Day, our song, at parties, because to this day it's still that song for the summer. It's that feel good joint. And I love when something clicks like that.
One that I don't know that got as much shine as it should, but I wanted to know the story behind you. Because for
Oh,
me, lyrically, like, and just sitting, I mean, that was, again, like, as I'm saying it, I wish, like, there is going to be the time where we get to do this live in the studio and get
yeah.
to spend some time. Um, but I tell you, in listening to you and listening to the flow, listening to, like, for me, I've been such a hip hop fan my whole entire life, and cadence is so big, but not just cadence. For me, it's the lyrical content, the heart and
Yeah.
soul behind it. So for me, it was all these things that had to come together into this perfect kind of being. And for me, You was one of those tracks. What's
Wow,
the
man.
story of
Thank you
You?
so much. That's a great song for me too, man. Like, well, it's a few major turning points for me with that song. One is the music I sampled from ironically, it was like a Beatles tune that had been recovered by Minnie Riperton and recovered. So it was this really beautiful tune that to me had this soulfulness and this southern grit to it. And then lyrically, it was a first. I want to say it was the first. Yeah, I think it was. I think it was literally the first song where I rapped the lyrics without melody at first. So it was like lonely, lonely, oh what was me, I say the complex cycle I go through, and I just was rhyming. And when the song was finished, I said, for some reason, the emotions that I wanted to emote or put out there just weren't making it without it being melodic. And I tried melody with the exact same lyrics that I had done without melody. I wrote it without melody. And I tried melody and I was like, lonely, lonely, oh, woe was me. I say the complex cycle I go through almost every day. To my dismay, I imagine being in this set, me holding the 21st letter of the alphabet. And that would become a style that I realized was open to me as a tool when writing songs. Like, oh, I can, if I feel like the emotion part is not reaching where it needs to be in this song, I can put melody to it. It's still hip hop, but it's like, ah. And to my knowledge, nobody prior to me had done that the way I did it, meaning the way that later, of course, Bones and Thugs would do, Nelly would do, Drake would do. So many others have done it since we did it. But to my knowledge, there had been nobody that did melody throughout an entire song, but it was still straightforward a hip hop track. So songs like Lottie Dottie had sections that were melodic. It's all because of you. I'm feeling sad and blue. So there was sort of skits that had melody in it, but I'd never heard a hip hop song that just embraced melody straightforward, but still rhymed as if they were flowing in a cipher or something, like just really going at it. You was that first song for us. And second song was Rainy Revolution. Third song was Tennessee. And fourth song was People Every Day, the remix, not the original version, but the remix, the Metamorphosis mix, which is the one that ended up blowing up for everybody. Um,
Yes.
those were all my first experimental sort of melodic versions of songs.
So that mix of People Every Day, that's the one that blew up. The original
Yeah,
version of it was a little slower. Am I correct?
it is much
It is.
slower.
So
Yeah,
we
much
were
slower.
listening. I tell you, Speech, we were listening to it on the golf course in Thousand Oaks just like a week and a half ago. Me and my brother, and
Uh
it
huh.
was hitting, and it was hitting different, right? And I would
Yeah.
invite every single person that knows People Every Day, which is every person on Earth, unless you're on Mars. Well, on Mars, you still know
Right.
about that song, but I invite you today to go and listen to I mean, there's a grit and a grime. Like there's a like
Yep.
it almost settles in a completely different place, right?
Totally agree with you. And it's funny because the label, they wanted to release, so we put out Tennessee. It blew up. We got to number one on the hip hop charts, number one on the R&B charts. I think number three on the pop charts, maybe three or six. And it blew up. Our first song ever released, and it was a hit. And so they wanted to follow that up with People Every Day. At first, I hadn't done the remix yet. So the version you were just referring to was dope. I loved it. But it didn't have the melodic rhyming that People Every Day ended up having. I mean, I'm sorry, that Tennessee had. And I was afraid that if it didn't connect with the audience the same way Tennessee did, because Tennessee had an emotional connection and a party connection and just a uniqueness and a fresh breath of air type of connection. And I felt People Every Day, the older version, didn't have all of those elements. So I was a little worried. And I told him, listen, I'm definitely cool with the single being People Every Day, but let me get in the studio and let me try some things. And I tried the remix that ended up blowing up, and it did have some of the elements. So I did use melody on it, and I did, um, use a whole nother sample, which I just explained, and it just it just was huge. And you know, those kind of decisions you just make trying to make sure that you can keep the momentum. Because one thing, it's one thing to have a hit record. It's a whole nother thing to be able to make another hit record, you know, like after that. And that's a gift in and of itself.
Well, let's go down that road because, well, number one, thank you for opening up the door for hip hop to be able to get. You were the first person or the first group to be able to get the best new artist from a hip hop genre. Am I correct? You
I
paved
am
that
correct.
way,
Yeah, you are correct.
and so
Yeah, yeah, we did.
we want to thank you for that because I mean it opened the door for so many different so many different people that and genres and
Fact.
everything like that, which is amazing. Um, when you talked about connection point, I want to take that word and like it's almost like the sample, right? So you said connection, and
Yeah,
sometimes who you connect yourself to can either, you know, create challenges or it can, create opportunities. You had an
yeah,
opportunity when Tennessee hit People Every Day. I think one of the most underappreciated is Ease My Mind because that was Grammy nominated too, but I don't think it
it
gets
was.
enough shine. Okay.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree with you.
but because of all this, you have one of the most influential, but at the time, most controversial directors of our time, Spike Lee, come to you and ask about you creating a song for him. And again,
Yeah,
connection point sometimes at that time, like when we think about Spike Lee now, you think about the New York Knicks, you think about Happy,
yeah,
all the stuff.
yeah,
But
yeah,
at that time, there was a division point in that realm. Does that make sense?
yeah. Yeah, no doubt about it. It makes sense. Yeah.
So take me to that. How did that happen? How did the connection point with Spike happen? And then take us through that Revolution song, which was unbelievable also.
Thank you so much about that. Well, I was the biggest and still am, but I was the biggest Spike Lee fan ever. So I loved his music, his movies from She's Gotta Have It to School Days to, Do the Right Thing. I mean, just because at that time he was very controversial because there wasn't a lot of black movies being released that addressed the issues that were affecting black people at the time. So a lot of movies were coming out, but it wasn't addressing the issues. And his wasn't black exploitation type films where it's sort of a caricature of blackness. It was blackness in a more in your face way and telling stories that truly just kept the main characters as black, which hadn't been done in a long time in film. And he was one of my hugest heroes. Now he didn't know me, so I was writing him letters and saying, "Hey, we're this group called Arrested Development. We would love to do something with you." Blah blah blah. He never answered. Maybe he never even got the letters. I don't know because we were doing snail mail back in those days. You actually literally wrote a letter and sent it into the mail and see if he ever opens it or gets it. So we now blow up, as you already stated, and we're at a nightclub one night in New York, at a little nightclub called Sweet Jane's, and it's packed. We're the headline, we're the ones performing, and it's literally the walls are sweating. That's how packed it was in there. It was probably a huge fire hazard danger, and we're backstage. We just finished rocking, and here comes Spike Lee walking into our dressing room. Now, for me, this is like literally like a, almost like a Jesus like moment to some extent. Like, it's huge because I love this guy and I love what he's contributed. So he comes backstage, we're all floored, and he starts talking to us. And he's like, yo, at that time, he was doing a movie about John Coltrane, and he wanted to call it The Love Supreme. And he said, I would love to do you guys to do, some songs for it. And we're like, yo, we would absolutely be honored to do that. It ended up being a movie called Mo Better Blues, and he ended up using our label mates, Gangstar, Premier and Guru, rest in peace, Guru, for that movie. It ended up being Mo Better Blues, and Gangstar did Jazz Thing for that. Then he did, so we didn't hear from him for a minute. He did X, and he called us, and he said, yo, I'm back. I'd like y'all to do. Now X was it was an easy yes to do that song, but it was a hard act to follow because Do the Right Thing had Public Enemy's Fight the Power all throughout it. And it was an anthem for the entire movie, not just a song tagged at the end or somewhere in the movie. It was a character in that movie. And so and Fight the Power is an absolute perfect song. I mean, so me as a producer, um, I was nervous to be able to follow that. You know what I'm saying? And Jazz Thing is dope too from Gangstar. So it was a upward call and it was an honor, you know. And Spike is very hands on. So we went into the studio in New York. I brought my own engineer. I went in the studio. Of course, the entire group went in the studio. But Spike insisted on being on the song. So like he's like, "Yo, we're the groups in the studio. We're like Revolution." And he's like, I want to jump in with y'all. So he got in the studio with us and he's like, Revolution. And so it was fantastic to work with him. He's such a hands on guy. We finished the song a couple months later, maybe even just a few weeks later, came back to New York and filmed the video, which was the biggest production I've ever been a part of. It had 500 extras. We blocked off 2 or 3 streets. We had cranes at each location, totally different set of huge production crews. So we had a crane at one location, basically doing what nowadays a drone would do, like catching the overhead visuals. And then we had a crane at another location, already set up. All the lights were set up. I had never seen such a professional, organized music video scenario in my whole life. It reminded me of what Thriller was, or like, you know, these big budget things like Michael Jackson and stuff like that. So it was just fantastic, and it will forever be a highlight for me.
So when you're going through the 3 years, the 5 months, and the 2 days, and you're doing it because the love of the music, and you guys have a vision, you have all these things, and then, I mean, things hit. Tennessee hits. It goes through the stratosphere. You follow up with people every day. I mean, it's like, how was the treatment different? You know what I mean? Like, not only from, I'm sure from the ladies, but just from people in general that maybe would have walked by you a couple years before and never said
Yeah,
anything, to
yeah,
then you being in that spot. And how were you able to stay as humble as you are through that? Because some people would have been like, I'm going to show you now.
yeah. Um, that is a great question, bro. It changes dramatically. And what's weird about it, like an inner body experience as a person going through it, you know, you haven't changed. So like it's as if on Monday you're a nobody, and I say that in quotes, everybody's a somebody. But from an industry standpoint, you're a nobody. And on Monday, and then on Tuesday, you're the guy, right? And so like literally we had headlines at the time saying I'm the next Bob Marley, like me personally, right? So like that's the kind of like uh perception that's being put on us, when I was the same guy yesterday but got no love, and today I got all this love. So you're getting it from women. That's definitely a challenge. As a young dude like that's 20 something years old, you're getting it from business, you know, entrepreneurs, people wanting to do business with you in numerous ways, not just musically, but brand opportunities. We were offered $1 million deal from Coca-Cola. Like these kind of things start happening all of the sudden. And you don't totally know how to deal with it because you don't know what you didn't do anything different on Tuesday than what you did on Monday, but everything has changed. So that's the trippy sort of head trippy part, you know, about being famous. It's like, oh, okay, everything. We were in France doing a concert tour early on. This is in like 92, 93. And literally, like the Beatles, we got off of our tour bus and hundreds of girls and guys were running towards us, like running, actually running, not jogging, not just walking fast, running towards this group. Like we had become that kind of popular. And it's just, you know, and that's overseas. Like that's the other thing. And that was our first time in France, you know.
Yeah.
Um, it is an absolute mind, you know, game. It's a trip. So how to stay humble? I mean, for me personally, I had a lot of I had to remember what the lyrics were. Like I had to literally remember what we did this for and what we're trying to accomplish. And I think you, at least a person like me, puts extra energy in trying to be down to earth
Yeah.
because it's so easy to get head blown up and stuff like that. So it was tough. It was tough. And there was a lot of internal strife. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat that. In the group, it affected each one of us in very different ways. And it did cause tension because, you know, first of all, monetarily, different people are making different amounts of money. You know, I mentioned earlier that Airly Tari wrote on Tennessee. Well, she made more money than Headliner did, who didn't happen to write on Tennessee. Ishi didn't write on any of the material. So she was making less. Ishi's one of our dancers. So she was making less money. She was making money from all the shows we did and all types of other things. But from a publishing and like songwriting standpoint, she wasn't making any money. So if you're new to that industry, you don't know what to do with that. Like everybody had to try to learn very fast. It's like being thrown into the deep end of the pool, right? And if you don't know how to swim, it's that kind of thing where you're trying to learn as you go, but still stay afloat, still promote the records, still be out there on the road and, you know, shake hands and kiss babies and all the things that you do in order to sort of make friends in an industry that, you know, a lot of people are doing you favors to have a hit record, especially back then. It's a lot less people that do you favors now. But back then, a lot of different people played a part in your success. And so you had to do a lot of sort of, you know, meeting people and being busy, you know.
How did you learn the business game? And like, again, most of the people who listen to the music, we hear the music, we know the Grammys, we know the multiple Grammys for you, 5 nominations, all these things. We think that once that happens, it's like the faucet, and the faucet just has gold bricks that come out of it all the time.
Yeah.
How does the industry actually work when you started, and how does it look now? Because now when we look at it, me and my brother were talking about this, and he asked me the question the other day. He said, you know, Kel, how does an artist today make money with their music? And I was excited to be able to have this conversation because you obviously know you had a leg up because you were writing, because you were producing, but can you
Yeah.
kind of run that down?
Yeah, definitely. I'll start with the music industry today. The sad answer is that it doesn't make music. I mean, it doesn't make money. Artists can, I mean, of course, there's a very few that are like the size of, you know, I don't know, Kanye West or Drake or Kendrick Lamar or whatever, who can make pretty good, decent money. And even that is not necessarily through their music as much as it is through touring and diversifying their incomes with various product endorsements and, you know, things like that. That's where they're going to make most of their money at. But um, through the music itself in today's atmosphere, it's very tough. To give you an example, back in the 90s, if there's this thing called sync licensing, and what sync licensing is if a major motion picture uses your song in the picture, right? So for us, for instance, you know, People Every Day has been on numerous movies and series, TV series, but songs like Man Final Frontier, for instance, was in the famous movie called Boomerang, which is Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence and, you know, Robin Givens and numerous others. And back in these days, an average amount of money that you would get for a sync licensing deal, a movie using your song, is anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000 for one song, one usage, one point in the movie. To give you an example, what you make today for that exact same privilege for a movie to use your song or a TV show and the like is anywhere from $200 to $1,500. So it's very, very different now than it used to be then. And that's just going back to my point, that is very tough. And so like Arrested Development is going to release an album on July 4th of 2025 this year, right? So July 4th we'll release our next record. I already know that from the record itself, don't get me wrong, dedicated fans are going to buy this record, but that's not going to be what makes us money. And it's just sort of the way of things now. And so it's a very different music industry. Um, we tour, we do other things that help us to gain income, but it is definitely not the same that it used to be, and in an unfortunately downward spiral as opposed to upward.
Mm. What about the 70-30 split with the record deal? How, like, because when people say, "Oh, I got a record deal," and then they get fronted, can you explain this? Because when I became aware of this, I was like, "That's the only legal loan sharking that I've ever heard in my entire life."
Yeah, so the music industry started off corrupt, and it has continued that trajectory and gotten worse over time, and that's just the truth. So when we got a deal, the average amount of what they call points, which ends up being percentage points that an artist can get, was anywhere from 10. So I'll say it in cents. Out of every dollar, you get 10 cents for a record, or you get 13 cents. It was anywhere from 10 points to 13 points, 10 cents to 13 cents. I never even saw a 30-cent deal in my entire career in the 90s and all the way up to today. So my point is, it was worse than what you just described. And that was the average deal, by the way, in the 90s. Late 80s, it was even worse. My heroes like Master G or Grandmaster Flash they probably made nothing, to be quite honest, at the end of the day, maybe from their live shows. But those artists had it even worse than we did. So I say all of that to say, the average deal was anywhere from 13 to 10% of each dollar. So yeah, if you were selling that record for $10, you made $1. Um, you know, that's it. If you sold 1 million records, it's $100,000. It's not as much as people might think, and that's to split with the entire group. Meanwhile, you have an advance,
Hmm.
and our advance, I'm just being candid with you. I mean, it's been many years since we did this, but our first advance, I want to say, was $75,000. Well, that was to make the record. That was to get outfits or clothing that you might need. That is to get management people that you might need to go on the road. That is for you to put in your bank account so that you don't have to work anymore, like a 9 to 5, so you can go on tour in the first place. So $75,000 was our advance. Um, I mean, we sold 5 million records, 4 million in the United States and another million outside of the United States. We made that money back plus some, but that is how much we got in advance. And we had to pay all of that back, plus all of the monies that they spent for promotion, which could end up being hundreds of thousands of dollars, and marketing, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the bill racks up very quickly. So you're right. It's been a scam, unfortunately, with the music industry for decades, and you know it's something that desperately needs to be revolutionized again.
How important is it for an artist to own their masters?
It's very important. I will say most artists don't. If you're assigned to a major label, it's unlikely that they're going to give you the masters. For me, just to give you an example, we recorded our record in 1991 into 1992. Um, I don't own my masters to this day. So over all of these decades, I've owned a little bit more of it per there's certain sort of benchmark years that you get where
Uh,
you get a little bit more of it, but I still don't own it 100%, nor does the rest of the group members own it. I mean, in fact, put it this way, I own the most of it because I produced all of the songs, and then I also rapped on all of the songs. So, you know, um, yeah, I made the most of it, and I still don't own
wow.
even what I put into it, nor do I own it outright. And this is 33 or 4 years later.
Now, could an artist could you go into the studio now, re-record the music, or do they own the rights of that actual music? Say like when Taylor Swift went back in and she
Sure.
re-recorded her stuff, do you have to change it to own it?
No, no. So that's a great question. You do have a right, but see, this is the beautiful thing. Any artist can make people every day all over. In fact, some artists have already done it. Mary J. Blige did it with Jermaine Dupri, and so many others have done it. Um, I can redo people every day, and I would just have to pay a certain amount of money to the rights holders, but not all of it. So I would make more money from that. The challenge though is what I was talking about earlier when I was saying samples have a certain spirit, a soul. There was a certain thing that was happening. Some of it's tangible and some of it's intangible that you can't put your finger on, but that made that record incredible back then, that it is tougher than people might think, at least for hip hop it is, to recreate that record with that same exact energy. But if you can do it, it's
Yeah.
worth it. So there's a lot of other artists from maybe the rock genre or from folk or blues who could do their record over and it could sound pretty much the same and everyone could celebrate it the same.
Mm.
But even if you were to make it over, I will say that there's still two versions of that record out there, or at least two. The version you've now made and the version that existed prior. And unfortunately, a lot of times the algorithms of today's streaming industry and the way music is distributed today is likely going to point to the first original because that's the one that's been in the ecosystem the longest, you know. So, but I'm not discouraging people from doing that because they can do it, and if they're lucky, they can, you know, own the rights to that new creation.
Speaking of owning the rights, there was a time where a TV show with Mr. Ron Howard, Opie Taylor, came out, and
Yeah.
and utilized a name that you had, which I want to tell you this, and I want to compliment you on this. How genius was it? Because it wasn't something, the copywriting thing, I'm sure like that wasn't as prominent as it is now. Like if a person
Yeah.
opens a business, they have a brand, you're looking at copywriting right away. In your
Yeah.
place, again, this is another place that you blaze the trail, and thank you, speech, thank you, Arrested Development, for opening this for all of us. What happened with that situation and how detrimental could that have been for you?
Yeah, that's a great question, bro. Like, so copyrights, you know, we didn't have language back in the 90s like brand, like this is my brand, this is her brand. We all used brands like, I don't know, Colgate toothpaste or, you know, Downy, you know, liquid detergent or whatever. But we, at least in my world, I never heard anybody say, this is my brand, this is my brand. So we didn't speak like that. That came a little later. So, like you said, copywriting your name and things like that wasn't an easy, like, oh, of course I would. It wasn't that way back then. So we did copyright our name. I think we had gotten advice from another artist that tell us to do that because there's some horror stories that I can go into about certain artists losing their name to perform, and Sugar Hill Gang was one of them.
Master
Um,
G, shout out to him.
it's exactly right. So you know it happens. So anyway, we did copyright it. What happened with Ron Howard and the whole TV show Arrested Development is, to be honest, and I don't blame this on Ron, right? Because I ended up sort of having communication with him during this. We ended up having to go to court about this name. We had not only copyrighted the name but trademarked the name. So basically, um, Ron Howard and Fox, which is the network that put that show out, decided to do a TV show named Arrested Development, and it clearly was an infringement on our trademark and our copyright because the point of a copyright or a trademark is to try to lessen the confusion for consumers out there to know what they're buying, what are they getting. And so generally speaking, you don't try to take someone else's name. It's like using like a burger joint called McDonald's. That's not the McDonald's we all are familiar with, right? So they wouldn't be allowed to do that. And so you only try to trademark in the areas that you think it could cause confusion. So the thing with a TV show, we never had a TV show, but TV shows tend to have soundtracks. They tend to release CDs, DVDs. Well, we have CDs and DVDs at that time period. Um, so there is a conflict of interest there. And so that's why we had to sue. And there's a lot of examples. Living Color, the TV show, the rock band Living Color. There's a rock band called Survivor, the TV show Survivor. There's a lot of examples historically that when these TV shows take the name, it tends to outlast, and surpass whatever the music group was because TV is just a very big thing in the Western world. So like, so we did fight it. And we ended up settling out of court and worked things out with Ron and them. And they made some jokes about us in their first number of episodes. And, we just kept it moving. But it was something we had to fight for. And we had to go to court, like literally talk in front of the judge and everything to try to make sure that our trademark was respected and, stuff like that.
It's amazing the way that God works, because it was the Super Bowl that actually sealed the deal. Am I correct?
Exactly right. So that proved our case. That's when we won hands down. We didn't want to keep them from using the name because they had already had an episode out. So what happened was on Super Bowl Sunday, the commentators on the game were just sort of doing a little plug for the network, and they were saying, "Hey, coming up next, Arrested Development." And one of the commentators was like, "Oh, I love that group." And the other guy was like, "Yeah, I think it's the group's movie or something like that." And they were just conversating, totally talking about, our group and not the TV show that many people love. So it's like, it made it clear that there was a confusion because of the use of the trademark to the average public. And it made total sense. And so it helped us in our case, actually.
Wow. Well, I got two more questions for you, because I know you've got many interviews today, and
Yeah.
but I would like to. I used to ask my parents if I could stay the night in front at their at my friend's house, but when both parents were there, so my parents would be embarrassed if they said no. And so
Right.
I'm doing that to you, Speech, because I'm going to
Right.
force you to be my friend for the rest of your life, and I want you on the show
That's
again,
right.
because I believe
Oh
that
man, I'd
there's
love to
so
come
many
back.
more things for us to, like rabbit holes for us to go down.
Totally agree.
Okay, my brother has a CRX 1985. My dad had got it from a friend who crashed it, and it had like a real nasty bite out of it. But my dad got it for free, or for $500. So, and we could never have a car like that before. My brother gets that car, and it's like the coolest car we've ever had, but it's got this big old dent in the back of it. I get my first job at Kentucky Fried Chicken, and I save up my money to go buy him a pull-out stereo at Circuit City in Santa Barbara. And me and my friend Paula,
So
we drive down there, and what's on the radio the whole time? Mr. Wendell.
come on,
And
man.
it
That's
became,
dope.
I'm getting it again. I'm getting it again. And Paula and I were listening to that. And I remember it was one of the very first songs. I'm a senior in high school, or maybe I'm a senior in high school. I think it was. Yeah, I was a senior in high school. I'm with my friend, she's a girlfriend, but I'm with her. I hear the song is playing in Circuit City, and
That's
I
so
start
cool.
crying, but I didn't tell her.
Wow.
Tears are coming down my face because I'm feeling this. Take me through, Mr. Wendell.
Yeah, that song was so Headline and I would be in the studio often in Atlanta at an area called Edgewood, and a street called Edgewood. And so a lot of homeless people, there's some shelters in that area. So they would be in that area, and they'd hear us bumping music in the studio, and they'd come in. And at first they come in to beg for some money, and we would always give them money, just like I talked about in the song. But we also were just curious about their life. So over time, certain guys would come in and just sit down and just watch us create. And while we're doing that, we talk about life, about love, about sex, about politics, God, you name it. And so what started to happen over the time was like, wow, we were just blown away by the wholeness of these people, and we were blown away by what the perception of them was in the public. So people would walk over them, ignore them, and yet these people had full and amazing lives and great intellect and deep wisdoms, and we were just impressed. And so that stuck with me. So then I had a melody, Mr. Wendell. Never met a guy named Mr. Wendell, by the way. So I had this melody of Mr. Wendell. I guess I liked the way it rolled off the tongue, and started writing about really a collective of all these different people, and that we had met, and named a fictional character of Mr. Wendell. But these other guys, like some of the stories that I talk about in that song, um, are definitely from these guys that I met. Now, some of these guys were not homeless because of poverty or mental illness. Some of them, and this is what the song Mr. Wendell's secretly about, Mr. Wendell wanted to walk a different path in life. And so he purposely was on the streets not to be part of the machine. Or now that the Matrix movie has come out, I can sort of liken it to that. It's basically, I don't know which pill it was, but taking the red pill and saying, okay, or the blue pill, which one it was, I forget, but deciding, okay, I don't want to be part of this Matrix. Like, I want to be in my own zone. And that's what the actual song Mr. Wendell ends up really being about. But we ended up donating like half the proceeds from that record to the National Coalition of the Homeless. We created a good relationship with them and donated money too. So it was a win-win in so many ways, man.
Wow. So I started the podcast because of my two kids, Maddox and McKenna. Maddox is a sports guy. He's playing for the quarterfinals in flag football tomorrow, which is going to be great.
Dope.
Marches to the beat of his own drum. He was wearing his pants inside out one time, and I said, "Son, you got to turn or inside out and backwards." I said, "Go in and change, check out, make your pants right." He comes back out and they're not fixed, and I was like, "Hey, you didn't fix your pants." I said, "What are you going to say when somebody makes fun of you for wearing your pants backwards?" He was like, "I'm just going to ask them, why are you wearing yours forward?" And that's his personality,
I love that.
right?
That's dope.
My daughter is in is in theater and the arts, singing, dancing, everything like that.
Dope.
I started this podcast because I didn't want them to worship idols. I wanted them to be inspired by iconic people like yourself. And
That's dope.
So what advice would you have for Maddox and McKenna? And if you could say both their names, it would be awesome.
Well, Maddox and McKenna, I tell you, you guys are on the right path already, because to me, the biggest lesson in life is being yourself, because each one of us come here with a particular story that is built into our minds and our hearts. And if you can maintain your originality, be who you really are meant to be, and not just follow, just like you were saying, with the pants backwards and inside out. It's like, if you can figure out a way to maintain yourself in this journey, that's what the world needs. That's the reason you were put here, is to give the world you, not some carbon copy of somebody else, but like give the world who you are. And my life is a testimony to that. So yeah.
Speech, it has been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to ask you, we're going to run a commercial. I'd ask you to just stay on just for a second until the commercial's off. If that's okay, because I know you got to go. Are you right at time?
Actually, yeah, I got it. Yeah, okay. I'm at that time.
Then you'll jump, but I want to tell you how honored I am to have you on the show. And like I said, you can't get rid of me. I'd love to have you on another time to be able to sit down and chop it up. But it has been an absolute pleasure. Make sure, if you're listening out there, All I See Is Melanin is out right now. You can also have Speech come and speak. Is a phenomenal, prolific keynote speaker also at any event, and I would suggest that. So, support it at any cost that you can. Speech, you have been absolutely phenomenal, and you're officially off the hot seat.
Thank you, man.
Love, and soul.
Peace.
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in.